This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a film that is going to be shown at the Cedar Lee in Cleveland. Um, but hopefully you'll be able to see it anywhere that you live in the United States or beyond in the future. And my two guests, Adam and Makayla, the story is very near and dear to them, from what I understand. It's basically the story of their life. And that's what Avoid the Maze is about, our journey through life. Some of the things that we never expect are going to ever happen to us. And guess what? We are in a situation and we've got to learn how to pivot. If we don't, we're really not living our life completely. So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. What, first of all, got you into filming? Because independent filming is a difficult life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Karen. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, what got me into filmmaking, honestly, was my wife. I've loved movies ever since I was a kid, and I always talked about how I would do a movie and how I would make a movie. And she just said, well, then make one. And she really said it as simple as that. And she said, you can either come up with excuses of why you're not making one, or you can make a movie. So that's how I got into filmmaking as a whole. But how the journey of Shredded started was really honestly from Makayla. Makayla and I we were coworkers. I hired her as a lead actress in one of my films, and she delivered a phenomenal performance. And then that started kind of our friendship and our professional relationship both. And she came to me with this idea, and very proudly, I talk about this. I said my first response was no. um, I was a 29-year-old man diagnosed with breast cancer, and so that was a personal journey of health struggle. Obviously, I was very scared, but also the stigma that came with that. Like, oh, you're a man, you had breast cancer. That's weird. I didn't know that could happen. A lot of questions, looks, thoughts. So I had a lot of I would say, kind of interpersonal trauma that I had not really dealt with. And Makayla approaching me with this idea, and then me beginning the process of writing it, and then us writing it together and producing it together and making it together. I can now very proudly say I feel like has really brought me a long way in my kind of journey of healing. So I'm not only grateful for our professional partnership and our friendship, but I'm so grateful to this film and the journey that we've gone on together with so many amazing people in the cast and crew. And I feel like I've really grown as a person. So yeah, that's kind of how we started. Like what, almost 2 years ago, Makayla? Is that what it is? Almost 2 years ago?
Yeah, October will be 2 years of
Yeah.
the film, but we met over 2 years
Yeah,
ago at
over
this
two years
point.
ago. Yeah.
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 So, a question I'm sure that our listeners are going to ask, because you're right. Most of us think that only women can get breast cancer, which is not the case.
Yeah.
How did you know there was something wrong, or did you?
It was really interesting. I had no actual signs or symptoms of cancer in the stage that I was in. I was on my couch one night and I was literally watching a movie. And I was stretching. And as I was stretching, I literally just scratched right here. And I went, oh, that feels weird, right under my arm. And I told my wife the next morning about it. And like a typical idiot, I was like, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. And she was like, well, you're going to the doctor. I can make the appointment or you can make it. So I went to the doctor. They told me it was nothing, but I insisted on a biopsy. They told me it was nothing. And then the surgeon called and said, hey, you have invasive ductal carcinoma and we need to schedule you for surgery immediately. So I started treatment, medication. I was scheduled for surgery less than a month later. And my whole life completely changed in literally a day. So
So, for something that you were scratching,
yeah,
and in the beginning, everybody said, oh, it's nothing.
I was literally told by three different doctors that it was nothing. And then literally I was at work and the surgeon called and said, can you come into the office? I can't give you your results over the phone. And I said, well, should I make an appointment? And he said, no, just come in. I'll make time for you. And I said, well, that's not good.
Yeah.
And I went in and he literally, yeah, he walked straight into the room and just said, you have invasive ductal carcinoma and we need to schedule you for surgery immediately. And my real life changing moment, and I haven't really talked about this actual moment much publicly, but I asked him, I said, do I get a second opinion? Or I don't know how this works. I'm not trying to be insulting, but if I don't get surgery, could this kill me? And he said, if you don't get surgery, this will kill you. Um, and that's kind of the moment when everything changed for me.
Right.
Lots of tests and medications and months and months and months of being sick and not knowing what was going to happen, and results and results. And, walking into a mammogram clinic, which our incredible actor, Anthony Dane, who plays me in the film, essentially a version of me, he has an entire monologue in the film about the exact thing, about the process of going through this. And it's probably the thing I'm most proud of that I ever wrote, is this one specific monologue that he gives in the film, which Anthony delivers an incredible performance in the film. And in this one moment in particular, I cannot watch it without crying, because it's everything that I have ever thought and felt about my life and what I went through in this one moment. And the performance that he gives, he did it in one take, which was unbelievable. And Anthony has his own personal journey that he has been through, not with him directly having cancer, but somebody who's very close to. And the performance that he gave, and right when I said cut, I cried, he cried, other people in the set were crying. It was an incredibly emotional moment. But, it's the looks and the stares and the questions, and, having people say like, well, why are you at a mammogram clinic? Are you picking up your wife or your sister or your friend? And I'm like, no, I'm here for me. And people just, the young woman that took me back said, this is her exact words. And I know she didn't mean this offensively, but she said, this is really exciting for me. I've never worked with a guy before. And I thought, I'm glad it's exciting for you.
Yeah.
So dealing with a lot of that stigma and stereotype, which is why, as I said at the beginning, I did not want to do this. I did not want to make this film. And Makayla, to her credit, honestly, in a very non-forceful way, she gave me time. I said no. And then it was like a few weeks. We didn't really talk about it much. And then you came back to me and said, hey, I know this will be hard, but I really feel like this is a story that we should tell. And then Makayla went into her own personal of why she wanted to do this film. And I just felt like, well, I overcame something. She overcame something extraordinary that happened to her that altered her entire life. And two completely different things, but our lives were both completely 180 changed because of something that happened to us. And we both pivoted. And after we pivoted, we both kind of landed in the filmmaking world. And I thought, well, I'm a writer and director and producer, and Makayla is a producer and a writer, but she's an incredible actor. And I was like, well, we got behind the camera, we got in front of the camera covered, so maybe we should make this film. And, she did, we wrote this together, we produced this together, we built the team together, we brought people together, we filmed in New York and Ohio. And, it was the most incredible, filmmaking experience. And for me personally, to be able to sit behind the camera and not only watch Anthony kind of portray my life, but watch Makayla, I couldn't even imagine. She's doing a version of herself. And I'm like, man, that must have been so hard. And we had so many conversations about it. And when I watched the film back, I was editing the film for months and months, and getting to watch Makayla's performance was inspiring. I think she delivers a phenomenal performance. And there's particular moments in the film. She delivers a really beautiful monologue towards the end of the film where she's talking about her experience and what actually happened to her. And it's a really kind of big build up because her character doesn't want to get into it. And then she finally does. And it's such a beautiful moment, because in that moment, the two characters realize maybe more than ever how similar they are, and how they went through two completely different experiences, but their paths are aligned, and how they think and feel is so similar. And we really just thought this would be something that we could bring to people, and they could watch and hopefully find something that they could understand and find hope in, themselves.
Absolutely. So, Makayla, what was it that triggered you that said, hey, Adam, we got to do this?
I mean, it was a couple things, right? It definitely starts back to, I had a really traumatic accident in 2017. And up to that point, like, I was in final callbacks for a Broadway show for a huge track. And like, that was the epitome of everything I had worked for in my life, like my dream, I was living in New York, everything was poured into that moment. And I fell down a bridge on my bicycle in Manhattan, and that just, I mean, technically on the Brooklyn side, but it just completely flipped my world upside down, because like my first thought when I could speak again was like, I like, this can't be real, or I have to understand why this is happening. And nobody teaches you in school how to pivot. Everyone tells you, to work really hard. They give you all the skills. If you just work hard, if you show up to the auditions, if you don't give up, but nobody tells you how to deal with when something life-altering happens. And you've spent your whole life wrapped in this one identity. And then that thing that not only is the thing you're pursuing, but also like dance for me was like a coping mechanism. It was an outlet emotionally. It was how I expressed myself. It was what got me through tough times. So then to not even be able to move my body because of something was just, traumatizing and completely upended my life to the point that I was in New York and I was like, I can't live here and watch everyone else pursue the thing I want to be doing. So I moved back to Ohio for a year and I was with my parents and got my surgery done in Cleveland, actually. And I just remember through that whole year, I was like, I can't find anything that I can relate to. Like, it feels like every movie I watch, they go like, oh, this hard thing happened. Oh, look, he won the gold, or oh, look, the team won the thing. And they just skipped over that whole like what it's actually like to go through something that completely shifts and changes your identity. And you have to come, like, something has to shift. You can't stay the old version of yourself. You can't be stuck in that. But the only thing I found that was like helpful was a YouTube video series from a ballet dancer just sharing an injury she went through, like not a movie, just like on YouTube. And a dear friend of mine had really gone through some really horrible traumatic things. So that was kind of the impetus of just like, I thought if I ever get past this, if I ever come out on the other side of this, I just want to give something to people that feel this way so they don't feel alone in this thing. And then flash forward, 2022, I think was when we really started talking about this. But I was at the Vancouver International Film Festival and I was watching Bones of Crow, which is, they did both a film and also a series. And the director was talking about how it was such a healing thing for her to work through the process of her mom going through Indigenous schools. The Indigenous were put into these schools in Canada to kind of make them more white, for lack of a better term. And it was very traumatic, the things that would happen to them and the unmarked graves they found and are still finding. And she shared this quote essentially that was like, film is one of the most powerful ways to work through and share our trauma with others and for others to be able to sit there and experience it. And I think even film more so than TV, because when you're sitting in a theater with other people and you don't have your cell phone and you're not on TikTok and Instagram and whatever while you're watching, whereas like we all watching TV, we're scrolling through Instagram or we're scrolling through TikTok or we're cooking or we're doing the dishes or whatever. Like that moment in a theater when you get to sit there with other people and experience something together, there's just nothing like it. And so kind of that paired with like I had spent a whole summer surfing in Rockaway, which was like just so healing for me to like have something else to do. And this too was how I pivoted into film. I'd always wanted to do film, but I was so like relentless in my pursuit of theater and dance and such. Like I didn't have the time for it. And this really was the impetus for me to shift. And I'm so much happier creating than I was like only auditioning before. But that's when I approached Adam and I was like, I feel like we have, because those are the moments when you're connecting with people who have been through something similar. Like even though we didn't know each other in that time we were going through it, it's like we had those people in our lives that were kind of that like realizing you're not alone. So the fictional part of the story is like where it's set and them coming together, but what is not fictional is the journey, and also like the fact that what was so healing for both of us is like realizing we weren't alone in what we were going through. And we both have terrible shoulders from our...
Terrible.
Which is how we first connected. It was kind of a joke, but
well, and when I read the description of the movie, that's when I said I wanted to interview the two of you for a number of reasons. It doesn't have to do with cancer, although cancer is a journey and it can be a terrible journey. But for some people, it can end up being a wonderful life experience because of pivoting. An accident, okay? It's truly an accident and you don't have any real control over that. But I found something about myself in there, And you just expressed it yourself, Makayla. A year ago, I was at the car wash and I got out to vacuum my car. Vacuumed one side, was walking around to the other side, and I was flat on the ground. I could not get up. My whole left side felt paralyzed.
Wow.
And I'm lying there, like yelling, "Can somebody help me?" And everybody wanted me to stand up. And it was like, I can't stand up.
Yeah.
Long story short, I was in the hospital for 4 days. Nobody could figure out why my left side was so bad because I fell on my right side. But physical therapy in less than a week got me up and walking. But that's when I realized I'm different. I'm different than I was a week ago. I have to walk differently. I have to think differently. And here it is a year later, and the injuries that I had on my right side, which nobody knew about, are now showing up. And so again, I'm not going to let it stop me. You didn't let your cancer stop you. You didn't let your accident stop you. Most of us have that resilience, but at the time we don't realize it. And so that's where I think your story is going to help people say, okay, Adam, yeah, they told you if you didn't have surgery, you were going to die. So some people would have just said, okay, my life's over.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the treatment was not a fun thing to go through.
No, I was very sick for a long time. And I had a lot of days, weeks, months, where some days are easier than others, but there was the days where I would wake up and go, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. And those are tough days. Everything else is cake after that. But it's, no. And I think you touched on something, Karen, that's really interesting, is that I think none of us really know what we're capable with until we face it. You can hear about it and you can watch it in movies and you can talk about it or hear it in songs or whatever it may be. But until you face it, you don't know what you're capable of. I never in a million years thought I was going to get breast cancer or capable of getting through that and capable of writing a film about it and directing a film and editing a film and showing a film about that. Never. But here we are. Makayla went through a horrific accident that changed her whole life when she was on the cusp of something that she had worked for her whole life. And, she could have given up. And she could have gotten some day job, working at a desk or something like that. I could have gotten some day job working at, X, Y, and Z place. But, it pushed us to pursue our passions even more and pivot and do things in a different way. But, watching Makayla's performance in this film, if you didn't tell me she wasn't an actor her entire life, I wouldn't know. She pivoted and became an actor. I pivoted and became a director. And just what we put together. And, like I said, the supporting cast, we have an incredible supporting cast, Jacques, Kat, Danielle. We had so many amazing crew people that Makayla brought from her world and I brought from my world. And then those people are now like making films together and friends together. And it's something that her and I talked about. We're so proud of. People that met on our set are literally present day
making movies
movies together. And people, they're posting about hanging out and meeting up. And, not only were we able to tell this story and it helped both of us kind of come to terms with our own personal journeys, and show it to people. And, we had our world premiere in April and, in Columbiana, and we had people coming up to us after the film. I was just hoping that somebody liked it, and we had people coming up to us and literally, like, not exaggerating, crying, and giving us hugs and saying, like, thank you for doing this. And like Makayla touched on earlier, people were saying the exact same thing. Like, they always show the injury and then I did it and I'm back and I won the gold medal and I got first place. And and I'm like, where is that 7 months you skipped over of the struggle and the pain and and you don't always get to go back to what you were doing before. And sometimes you have to become something more, something better. Like you have to evolve and grow. And that's what both of us did. And the people that got involved with this film and have supported us, and, Cedar Lee, I was talking right before this with Karen of Cedar Lee Theatre was my favorite theater when we were in Cleveland. It still is my favorite theater in Cleveland. And during COVID,
Yeah.
they allowed us to come and play films there. And they would tell us that the whole week we were the only people showing up. And we would play films there, and they would make it such a special experience from us. They would welcome us and chat with us and talk to us. And the manager there, Liz, she's really the one that helped us set all of this up and allowing us to show the film. And it's like this filmmaking community is so supportive and so beautiful and wonderful, and that's why I really enjoy being an indie filmmaker. You know, the big Hollywood community gets that rap sometimes of being so competitive and cutthroat, and this indie filmmaking community is just so many people that want to help us and support us and tell our story. And you know, I talked to Liz about it and explained it to her and showed her the trailer, and she was just like, "Yeah, when can we show the film?" And it was just, you know, that kind of support is really unbelievable in allowing Makayla and I to tell this story. And then we're showing it a little bit later next week in Doylestown as well. You know, so it's just what we're able to do and show it in theaters and have people see it. And then, you know, when, you know, it's going to be available to more people, it's just, you know, it's the filmmaking wise, it's the honor of my life. So
as independent individuals, writing, producing, acting, it's not like Hollywood. We know that. Okay. You're not walking around with bags of money and
No.
no.
people walking around you to make sure that you're safe. Paparazzi doesn't even know who you are.
Nope.
And yet you keep striving. How do you do that? Because one of the things that I've been doing for the last 7 years, I've been talking to a lot of independents, mostly on the music scene. And when I see what they go through, it's like you have to love your craft. You have to want to bring it out and say, you know what, if I'm eating peanut butter and jelly for the next year, that's what I'm going to do. So how does it affect the two of you?
Oh, I am just a very firm believer in whenever you can eliminate a gatekeeper, eliminate the gatekeeper. And I think we are living now, especially post-COVID, in a really interesting time that like last year we had a lot of strikes over a lot of huge issues like AI, what people are getting paid, what CEOs are making versus what the PA is making on set. So, I mean, so many things, health insurance, things like that, that you take that and then you also take what's happening in Spotify and the music scene. And I think film is just a few years behind what's happening in music. But why give up your rights, your creative liberty, your everything to someone who is at the end of the day, they're looking at dollar signs more than they're looking at impact. And I think that's what gets me through one, we get to choose the people we work with. That's huge. Like we got to create the crew around us that was incredible. And the cast around the film that was incredible. No one else had to sign off on that. In a studio or in that type of setting, there's a million other signatures and meetings that would have to happen. This probably would have taken 5 to 10 years more. Or it could have just been optioned and sat there on a shelf and never been made. Like that's another thing that can happen. I think for me, what really gets me through is knowing that like I look back at things that have been really hard and how when you put the right community around something and people really believe in what's happening, you don't need those bigger things. And sometimes those bigger things aren't necessarily better if you feel so strongly about the message and the impact and like what you want to leave on people.
I love that. I love that. And one of the things that you've proven is that you all sort of work together. You're proud of the people who have learned from you and now are off making films on their own. It's not a competition because you're all there for each other. And that's what I have found in the podcasting world. It's like, I don't get rich over doing this, but I'll tell you, my life gets enriched every single day when I meet individuals like you and I say, okay, if they can get through that, then I can get through the next hour. I can get through the next week. So what do you expect next week at the Cedar Lee? We're going to have a premiere, which I can't be at, which is really frustrating to me, but I will get a chance to see the movie at some point. What do you expect your audience to be like? Where do you really think they're going to come from? Any idea?
Yeah, we're definitely going to have, some friends and family there. We're going to have some, hopefully, other people within the filmmaking community. We also reached out to a large surfing group that is like with Lake Erie, and a lot of people have responded really positively to that. So I think we're going to have a pretty eclectic group, which is exciting. It sounds cheesy, but I always say this, and Makayla's heard me say this a million times, but I genuinely, this film is so personal to me, and I'm so proud of it, that if one person watches the film and says that they get something out of it, or they feel a little bit better, or they want to push a little bit more, or they want to fight a little bit more, or it sort of refills their hope tank, I'm happy. We made this film for ourselves, and what we're finding, is that it's becoming a film for a lot of other people, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, I
I
know
think
you
that,
have to take off, Adam, so I'm
yeah.
going to finish this up with Makayla, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you, Karen. I really, really appreciate you. Mac, always good seeing you.
I
And
know.
yeah, and I will, Karen, we'll definitely send you the film so that you can watch it and everything like that.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
thank you so much for
Yeah.
having. Really appreciate, and I'll see you guys. Have a great day.
Absolutely. Stay
Thank
well.
you.
Stay
Bye.
well.
Bye, Adam.
So, Makayla, one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I didn't get a chance to ask Adam, but I'm going to ask you, what was it like for your family and friends during your recovery? And then when you said, hey, we're going to do this film, because part of their life is going to be in the film.
Um, yes and no. I think, how do I phrase this? During the recovery was hard, and I think this is a thing I would love to touch on, is the whole major first part of my journey is how angry I was and how I could not move past what was happening because I was so angry. And the more I started sharing on social media, when I was like, I feel so alone, I feel like nobody understands what I'm going through, and I started sharing some things on social media, and people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that, because I felt like no one else felt the way I felt.
Right.
And it took a long time to even move past the anger phase of like, why did this happen to me? This isn't fair. Life isn't fair. This is horrible. Like, and that was something that Adam and I really talked about, was so important, that is such a big part of the film, because I think people either they feel tremendously guilty because they can't move past the anger, and or they just never do. And then you hit a point that maybe you feel like it's even too late to move past that, and you live in this state of regret. And like, one of my biggest regrets is how long I spent angry, that I could have been pivoting, and I could have, like, who knows where I could have been. But I try not to get, caught up in the shoulds and the coulds and the,
Right.
but if I would have maybe not lingered in that anger place so long, like maybe something else, could have happened. But that is my story, and that is my journey. And I think that's what people are going to resonate with, because if I went through it, I certainly am not the only person who went
Right.
through that. It was tough on my family. I mean, I have always been such a go-getter. I'm really the only artist in my family. Almost everyone else has a little bit more of normal jobs. So I will say my family's always been really tremendously supportive of me pursuing the arts. They've really never given me the you should do something else, because they know how the arts impacts them.
Right.
So I think they know it's a tough life, it's not an easy life, but I've never gotten the, well, see, told you so, you should have. I'm lucky I never had that, but it was really hard on my family to, I mean, one, amazing for them to let me come back and live with them for a year, but I was not a pleasant human to be around for a year at all, in any way, shape, or form. It was quite horrible, to be honest. It took a lot of moving through that. In terms of them like watching the film or being a part of it, we really wrote the journey in a way that it was more about our personal journey and not about family, in a way
Right.
of like, I don't know, putting it any sort of way, and setting it in like a surf camp really helps with that. Because at the end of the day, support is so important. But if you don't want to get better and you don't want to change and you don't want to, there's nothing anyone can do for you.
Exactly.
There's no one can pick you up. Like you said, like no one can pick you up and carry you across the finish line if you don't want to be carried across the finish
Exactly.
line. Or, whatever metaphor we want to use. So it was hard. My mom said it was really hard to watch. It was really hard to go back to that and like remember that that's what I was like. Because so many people were like, oh, you're just playing yourself. And I'm like, I am playing a foreign version of myself that I do not like. I have not been that version of me. Like it's been 7, 8 years.
Yeah,
And I think you have to get to a certain point in your healing before you can even think about
I'm
like,
sure.
let me make a
I'm
movie
sure.
about that.
And
Yeah.
one of the things you're talking about when you're talking about the anger, I want our listeners to understand it was grief that you were going through. It was grief because you lost a part of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Part of you maybe died at that point.
Yeah.
And when that happens, we're in a state of limbo. We
Yeah.
can't think about how can that recover, okay? Or who am I going to be next? Because you worked so hard to be that person. And when that disappears, or you at least think it's gone, because sometimes you can get it back, okay? But the couldas and the shouldas, we have to throw those away because you had to go through what you did to get to where you are now. And,
Yeah.
When I started coaching and, I went back to all my training. And when I would say that to my clients, they would say to me, I have to feel this miserable to get ahead. It was like, it's not that you have to feel that miserable. You have to understand why you feel that miserable.
Yeah.
Why are you hurting? You sort of knew, but you weren't ready to move out of it because in some ways it was a comfort zone.
Yeah. It's easy or to live in kind of it's almost like a victim state too of I could almost write things off and blame things on that. And it was a cycle of grief for sure. It was grieving all of that, you're not ready to lose it. You don't know it's coming and it comes and it's taken from you before you gave it that permission. And we
Exactly.
want to be in control. And I finally went to therapy because my mom was like, you're either going to therapy or like we got to figure something else out because this arrangement is not working. And that's, the characters we wrote in the film were so important besides the two of us of just like, how can we reflect the therapist? How can we reflect those people that just had those little things that helped with that shift, not just each other meeting? That like the barista Danielle plays just gives this like heart-wrenching, like someone can be smiling and look like they've got everything together, but then sometimes those are the people that really have some of the deepest stories. And we wanted as much as possible to like bring that together because it's so important that people know that and have people like you to talk through that and understand that it's a part of something else, not this just one thing that is only them.
Right. Well, luckily, the current generations understand the concept of being vulnerable and discussing things. I grew up in an era initially where my mother used to say, do not hang out your dirty laundry for the neighbors to see. And so
Yep.
we would hold things in and maybe express it in the house. But then again, if mom and dad didn't think we should think that way, it was like, don't think that way. It's like, okay, how do I turn it off in my brain not to think that way?
Well, that's why when you asked about our audience, I think the thing that was the most shocking to me, to be totally honest, because when it happened, I was like, I was 24-ish, I think, when it happened, which like, they're like, you don't make it by 25. Like that's the new thing. Like there's something wrong with you. And there's all this pressure to make it in your 20s. And so originally we thought we were writing it for like 20-year-olds. Like that's who we thought like how do you work through that thing when you're young and your life is beginning? But what shocked me was how many Gen Xers and boomers came to the show, but then came up to us after sobbing, saying exactly that. They felt like, they weren't ever allowed to express that or feel that. And like this gave them permission to do that.
Absolutely. I am so glad that you guys put this together. I cannot wait to see it. I'm also going to extend an invitation to you and Adam. We do another show called Grief Belief, and I would love to have the two of you on there because your story fits so well. Because again, so many people believe that grief means you've lost a loved one. Well, that is one form of grief. But
One
the two of
form.
you have changed your lives. Okay, your lives will never be the same as they were before.
Yeah.
But one of the things you both have learned is how to pivot and how to make today your best day. And I can't wait to hear more from the two of you. So thank you so much. And sorry about yesterday, but it's a good thing I
Honestly, it's good
emailed
because
you.
Adam could come.
Well, we were all supposed to do this yesterday, and that storm hit Northeast Ohio. And just as I was sending a text on my phone to you, my electricity went out. And it was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that, because if you would have gotten online and not find me there, you think, what is wrong
I
with
was like, I got the alert that there was a tornado warning, and I was like, maybe I should email you if we're gonna,
Yeah.
because
Well,
it hit
luckily
us
we're all,
probably 15 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, luckily we're all safe. And hopefully those of you
Yeah.
in the Cleveland area on August 14th, correct? August
Yes.
14th at the Cedar Lee Theatre in University Heights. Please get out and see the film. If you can't, I will have some links for Makayla and Adam, and reach out to them and see if you can get to another premiere, because that would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
we have a few more
you.
coming up, and of course we'll let you know too when it's available on streaming and all those
Wonderful.
platforms. So thank you for having us, and thank you for having this podcast. I think it's so important that we're sharing stories and hopefully inspiring one another, and you're creating an amazing space for that. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
having us, Karen.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.